How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Geek-Stew. Today, guys, welcome back to Horror Stew. That's right. So today, guys, we're going to do a little something different, something I don't think I've ever done for Horror Stew or on this channel. But today, guys, we're actually going to be talking about a game. And this game, I have some gameplay for. And now you're probably wondering, what game are you going to talk about? Have you ever heard of a nice little gem called House of the Dead? I bet you have. So if you don't know, House of the Dead is probably one of the best, I would say, rail shooter type games of all time. You may remember any of the entries to the House of the Dead series. I mean, there are plenty to name, but of course, there are some lesser known entries that people don't know about. Like I mentioned, the arcade cabinets for House of the Dead 1 and 2 both stand out to me so vividly as a child. Going to arcades and playing those was always something I enjoyed doing. In fact, me and Salsa, actually, we always used to have a thing where we would always play the House of the Dead games when we saw them. We would go there and we would play them, and no matter how much money it cost, we would always beat it. It was a ritual to us anytime we saw the House of the Dead games. But like I mentioned, you may not know of all the entries to the House of the Dead title. I mean, there are various incarnations of the main game, such as Typing of the Dead, and there are even some further extenuations into other platforms, even console versions. But there might be one that even the most expert of House of the Dead experts might not know. Today, we're going to talk about the Game Boy Color game, Pinball of the Dead. So, Pinball of the Dead. If you've never heard of Pinball of the Dead, you're going to hear about it today. So Pinball of the Dead was as you can see, is a pinball version of House of the Dead. Pinball of the Dead is a pinball video game developed by Sega's Wild Entertainment Division and published by Sega in Japan and then THQ in North America. This was released for the Game Boy Advance on June 19th and July 4th, 2002 in America and Japan, respectively. And based on the Sega, it's obviously, of course, based on the Sega's game House of the Dead. Of course, as mentioned previously, you've probably heard of House of the Dead. And House of the Dead is a fantastic, fun, full-motion, rail shooter game that is, part of, I would say, one of the best parts of the 90s and the early 2000s when it comes to arcades. Now, if you've never, ever seen Pinball of the Dead, this game, honestly, is incredible. I would go as far to say it's incredible, and here's why. I never knew that you could combine zombies and a pinball game to make it actually fun. Now, this game, of course, did receive some generally positive reviews from video game critics, receiving an editor's choice on GameZone, and they even praised the graphics and the sound. Obviously, they don't hold up that well to today's standards, but regardless, it was called one of the best games of all time from the gaming magazine Nintendo Power. So, let's get right into it. So if you've never seen this, here's the main menu. You have Game Start, Continue, Tutorial, Options, Rankings, Language Select. All of these are pretty standard for what I would consider to be a Game Boy game, especially one that keeps score like this one does. If you hit Game Start, you can get Normal or Challenge Mode. For the purpose of this, we're going to do Normal Mode. But if you were curious about what Challenge Mode is, well, that's what we're here for. So Challenge Mode refers to a more of an actual challenge. It has to actually do with moving through the various games in an attempt to do this, because there's multiple maps. So challenge mode actually has a score limit for each map, and as you can see, it starts you out on one and you have to move through them. But we're not going to focus on that too much. Of course, if you ever wanted to play this, you could find the software yourself out there. I'm not telling you to do so, but however it goes. But that being said, alternatively, we have what we would call a pretty standard normal mode. You have 3 stages to select. We have Wandering, Movement, and Cemetery. Now, each of these reflect different parts of the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Wandering, and we're just going to give you a little bit of a look at what we're doing. So when you open up Wandering, you have this wonderful screen here, and it's going to go hole 1 in Kagyo. Normally the boss becomes ready by defeating all of the plugs. So in this one, you have to use the crosshairs to land a shot on the zombie on the screen. This will give you a mystery multiplier or whatever else. So this will, of course, then prompt the ball to launch, and actually it told me that the boss is ready. So when the ball comes out, there are 3 layers. We have layer number 2 actually here that leads up into layer, I would say 3, because 3 is the farthest up there. But as you can see, it's pretty standard. You know, it's pretty standard pinball mechanisms. And then down here is the lower level. Of course, this holds similar mechanisms for ball save, and if you let the ball go down, of course, then, you know, standard pinball mechanism, it goes away. So this is pretty standard when it comes to, I guess, pinball-related games. This one, of course, is just specifically there for that of the House of the Dead. Now, as mentioned, there are bosses in each of these levels, and in this one specifically, it is the first boss from the House of the Dead 2 game, which I believe goes by the phrasing of Judgment. Now, as you can see, each of your pinballs are held by either the left button or the A button. That is the third tier up here where you can actually get access to the boss level if you're good, unlike me. And, I mean, it's really straightforward. I mean, there's not much else to it. I mean, it's honestly a lot of fun. You know, different areas have different things that it does, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, it's pretty standard. Movement. This is one of the other maps. I just wanted to show a couple other features of this. Movement, it looks like the interior of the, I don't know why we're shooting one of the main characters, but I mean, that is what it is. But interior, this is a different level, of course. This is a more scientific level. This is supposed to be more like, honestly, the last level of the House of the Dead game, where you face off against the final 2 bosses in House of the Dead 2. But, you know, Pinball of the Dead obviously does a great job. A lot of great animation and a lot of great different monsters and stuff that are, you know, you can fight against. Of course, there's the ball save function, as well as the, you know, of course I would do that. But, of course, the same standard process for that of any pinball game. Ball save, ball goes down, you're kind of screwed. But this one is unique because you can actually, you get that bonus little game in the beginning where you have to shoot whoever's on the screen. But again, I don't know why I'm shooting one of the main characters of the game, but I guess that's neither here nor there. But honestly, this game, if I had to say so, is probably it's a really fun, entertaining pinball game, especially for a Game Boy. You know, I do recall there being a handful of other pinball games within the same vein, maybe not of House of the Dead, but for instance, I do recall there being a pinball game for Pokemon, and even further than that, there are other various games that I can recall that have pinball versions. And honestly, this is just very unique to me because, you know, there are no other House of the Dead features on the Game Boy that I know of. And in fact, most of the entries into the House of the Dead series were either arcade cabinets or were released on later consoles like the Wii. But that being said, this honestly is, I would say, one of the most fun pinball games that you can play with. It has 3 different modes. The third of the modes being Cemetery. Cemetery is a very interesting, honestly, I think this one's my favorite. Obviously, I goofed there and I messed up, but Cemetery, actually, it's very spooky, very creepy. It's honestly a little gory, you know, body horror, if you will. You know, the dismembered hands being your paddles within the game, and honestly, it's super interesting how this game works. Like I said, there are boss levels. In addition to that, there are your standard pinball mechanisms, such as spelling out words or phrases, your varying levels of the pinball, you know, machine itself, and also just very, very creative. Like I said, you have dismembered hands as your pinball paddles. And, you know, and it's just super interesting how all this works. And, you know, and like I said, you get boss levels. I think on this one you get to face Judgment, which is the chainsaw-wielding mofo, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, it seems pretty standard, pretty straightforward. I mean, how else can I explain it except for a really cool pinball game where you get to kill zombies with a pinball. And in addition to that, you can, you know, reach yourself into new levels and new territories by continuing to do well during the pinball round. Of course, everything you do, as standard with pinball, is based on how you do during this ball specifically. If you, for instance, lose this ball and you have to reshoot, then of course you're going to lose any progress or track that you've done, any multipliers, any special abilities, so on and so forth. But honestly, as far as pinball games go, like I said, this is very entertaining. It has a lot to do with the zombies. It has a lot to do with the original lore. And honestly, it's one of those games that I started to play, and I can't say that I hate it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little brief bit of gameplay that I was able to get with that. I definitely was trying to try something new with this video because I found that game. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I've never seen this before in anything I've ever looked through. So it's super interesting to go through it. And obviously, I guess I just wasn't, that big of a fan during that time. And maybe I just didn't do my research well enough. But, talking about Pinball of the Dead really got me wanting to play the old House of the Dead games. So I might try and do that sometime. I know that arcades are kind of here, few and far between. And I'm sure those arcade cabinets are the same, not to mention during a pandemic, it's hard to get out. But that being said, maybe in the future I'll find somewhere to go to play this. Who knows? But if you guys did enjoy this video and you'd like to see me play other Game Boy games or find other games, I think I have the ability to potentially get recording from, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64, NES, and SNES based on what I have. So if you're ever interested in that, if you want me to see other games of that nature, let us know. I'm also looking into getting other software to record additional gameplay on Xbox and other things of that nature. So, let us know. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want, what you don't want. And hit us up on social media, Facebook and Twitter. If you want to join the crew, hit us up there. And as always, guys, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay awesome. We will see you in the next one. See ya.